welcome to the channel, That Retired Guy. Yeah, it's me, Darell. You know, that retired guy, or should I say Darell John Dutton, because once again I'll be talking about the Dutton Ranch. Now, as you know from earlier videos, we've been busy building this Dutton Ranch up here in the Ottawa Valley. And yeah, we're building a home where the politicians roam and the mules and the pachyderms play, where seldom is heard a credible word, and their lies they're spread widely all day. Well, now to be clear for my American listeners, the red and blue teams are not actually called donkeys or elephants. In Canada, they're called grits and Tories. And you know that whole red and blue team thing? Well, in Canada, red is blue and blue is red. And don't even get me started on the orange and the green and the purple teams. Yeah, it's a mess up here. Send help. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, the Dutton Ranch, right here in River City, or should I say Capital City, and yeah, that starts with C and that rhymes with T and that stands for trouble. But I'll get to that a little later. In this video, we're going to be having a look at all the engineering work that has to get done, and we'll talk about how we went about selecting the contractors for the build. So now if you're thinking about building your own homestead or Dutton Ranch in the country, well, you come to the right place. Or if you just like to follow along with what kind of trouble that retired guy is getting into, well, come along as we follow the Dutton Ranch Saga as it unfolds. Okay, so if you remember in the last video, we were working with our architect to come up with a ranch design and drawings that the whole family could be happy with. Well, there were many bumps in the road and surprises along the way, but in the end, we have a design that we're all proud of. Now, you might think with all the time and energy that went into those detailed drawings, we'd be ready to apply for a building permit and start construction. Well, hold your horses, because not so fast. This is Canada after all. Now, with all the land and natural resources and educated population, Canada could be one of the wealthiest nations in the world. And if we were allowed to actually develop our resources, we could probably eliminate poverty and raise everybody's standard of living all around the world. But what do we do instead? Well, we tie ourselves up with senseless rules and legislation. Now, welcome to the bureaucratic capital of the world. Now, for example, if you go to Ottawa's website, they boast that it only takes 10 days and $2,800 to get a building permit for a 3,000 square foot house. Now, that might sound good, but it's only one of the many hurdles in this long relay race. By the way, that compares to 3 days and $240 for our neighbor to the south. You know, 3 times longer and 10 times more expensive. But what they don't tell you is that you can't actually get a building permit until you've gone through what's called the development review process. Now, that's where they ask for all these engineering studies and plans to be done. And I'll get to that in a minute, but hold on to your hats, folks. This is where we see the real cost of the bureaucratic state. This plan review process, well, there's a similar one, for example, in Austin, Texas, one of the most liberal bureaucratic cities in Texas, and it takes 15 days and costs $2,000. Well, in rural Ottawa, it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months and costs you $29,000. So in Ottawa, that's over $30,000 just to get the city approval. That's 10 times longer, and it's 14 times more expensive. I mean, no wonder we have a housing shortage and the highest prices in the world for real estate. In the USA, property rights are actually enshrined in the Constitution. Owners have the right to possession, to control, disposition, enjoyment, and exclusion. I mean, look it up. I did. And more specifically, Americans have control over what's being built on their property. And although local authorities still require building permits and fees, they're less restrictive and way cheaper. So here in the Canadian North, not so much. Okay, so that's just the way it is up here in Canada. I mean, suck it up, Buttercup. We're still going to go after this brass ring, you know, the elusive building permit. Now, in order to submit our plans to the city for review, we need to get some engineering work done. I mean, those fancy architectural drawings, they're not good enough. You need structural engineering, mechanical engineering, topographical surveys, geological engineering, septic plan designs, and a site plan. No big deal. Okay, so let's first talk about structural engineering. The first structural design question that we had, the one we had to answer was, are we going to build with stick frame or are we going to go with ICF? Now, that's a fun topic, and I could do a whole video on that, but, what's fun for me is probably not so much fun for you. ICF stands for Insulated Concrete Forms. And instead of traditional builds, done with lumber, these are poured concrete walls. We chose this method mostly because, although it's a little more expensive, you recover the cost from energy savings over the long term. In Canadian winters, a good tight build can, with low thermal conductivity, it can save you thousands of dollars a year. Now, combine that with geothermal system and heat pumps, and you've got a really efficient system. And we decided we'd install a closed-loop geothermal system. You bury these long runs of pipe in the ground, and they transfer heat and cooling from the ground to the house. Now, we got an $80,000 quote from the geothermal loop, and the whole HVAC system, the heat pumps and all that, that's going to be about $100,000 to $200,000 range. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. Now, there's some government grants out there, and for heat pumps or geothermal, but haven't really priced those out yet. Now, just a couple of things about ICF before I move on. It's likely going to be difficult to find yourself contractors to build with ICF, and also structural engineers to do the drawings. These guys are booked solid with large commercial projects, and you need to get into the queue early. There's only actually 4 builders in Ottawa that work with ICF, and luckily the one that we finally agreed to work with, he was able to refer us his structural engineer. You see, our structural engineer, the one that we had lined up, he's not familiar with ICF construction, and he wanted nearly double the cost to use our project as his training program. Now, the engineer recommended to us by the builder, he cost us $5,000, and that was well worth it because he's able to explain things to our architect, and he was also able to challenge some of those crazy rules from the city building department. They don't really even know about ICF, so it was worth the money. Anyway, make sure you got a contractor and an engineer that's experienced with ICF before you start. And, okay, I know I said I'd make this quick, but let me just say that the ICF construction process, it's amazing. Did you know that there's at least 4 different kinds of these blocks? And the way all this goes together, it's so cool. I spent probably way too much time just watching these ICF building videos. All right, now that I'm geeking out on all this cool construction technology, let's talk about solar. Yeah, I'm looking at panels on the roof and Tesla walls in the garage, the whole 9 yards. Or in Canadian, that's 8.23 meters. Anyway, we're looking at energy independence, getting off the grid. But actually, the reality is in Canada, if you're looking to go totally off the grid, you're going to have to give up a lot of creature comforts. I don't think that's on, right, sweetie? Anyway, the winter days, they're just too short, too cloudy, and the panels, they get covered with snow. You can't make enough electricity to get you through any kind of a long power outage. Now, you might want to check out the video I did on how we handled the great power outage of 2021. And while I think about it, be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of these electrifying stories. Anyway, back to our solar solutions. We may not be able to power our unnecessarily extravagant lifestyle, but what we can do is we can feed into the grid. And, when the sun shines, and we get some kind of a credit back from the hydro company. Oh, yeah, for my American friends, in Canada, electricity is called hydro because, historically, most of our energy came from hydroelectric dams. Come to think of it, though, really all electricity comes from water. Water spinning a generator either as liquid or steam. It's all hydro. Anyway, we managed to work out a solar system that would work for the ranch. We have 45 panels for the roof, and that should generate, they say, $170 of electricity a month. And the salesman tells us that we'll save $67,000 over 20 years. 20 years, that's the life of the panels. Well, we'll see. Now, the quote for our system, the whole system, is about $44,000. So in theory, it pays for itself. More than just saving money, though, I was looking for some energy independence. Now, for that, you're going to have to add some Tesla power walls. Well, maybe not Tesla, because each of those is $25,000. There are a lot cheaper options out there. Now, electrical storage, that should help us get through those more and more frequent power outages that we're getting. I just don't have much trust in the power grid anymore. Okay, so I mentioned earlier there's still a lot of engineering work that needs to be done before we can submit our application. And besides the structural and electrical and mechanical, the HVAC work, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning that I was talking about, we need to submit a site plan, and that needs to include a well and septic designs. Now, this site plan has to show elevations, it's got to show drainage, and to do this, we need a topographical survey and also a geoengineering report. Who knew? Now, the topographical survey, that's going to cost us $6,500, and all you get is this drawing with a bunch of elevations on it. It's kind of cool, though, because it shows the road that my son and I cut into the property. That kind of makes it all official. Yeah, you can check out that video, too. So with the topographical survey behind us, we moved on to getting a geological report. Now, this requires that we excavate test pits. And we got to have an engineer to write a report about the soil conditions. Now, I got to say, it was kind of fun to go out there and watch this whole process. Almost worth the $3,000 price of admission. No, not really. So now with the topographical survey and soil conditions scoped out, we move on to check the last box on the list, which is a septic system design. Now, this has to be submitted along with everything else before you can apply for your building permit. Now, there's a separate fee for getting the septic system permit, just another $1,200, but also going to cost $3,000 to hire the engineer to design the system. Well, c'est la vie. We end up with a draft site plan showing 3 options and where to site the tanks and the drain beds. We pick one, and off he goes to finish the design. So now we're close to having our development application ready. It's starting to feel actually like a reality. Now it's late fall, and we're hoping we can get some approvals to start building after the spring rains, probably May or June. That's if we're lucky. So while the engineers are working away, we're spending our time hunting down contractors. Now, we've already decided on an ICF builder, but we still need interior framing and drywall, and we're going to need floor and roof trusses. We're also going to need an excavation contractor, to dig the foundations, and also bury our geothermal pipes. And we need an HVAC contractor for the heating and air conditioning. We're going to need a cabinet maker for the kitchens and bathrooms. We're also going to need plumbers, electricians, the whole 8.23 meters. Now, this is when things start to come off the rails. Trouble right here in River City. Remember that ICF builder? The one that we had lined up? Well, he informs us that there may be a problem getting those cool styrofoam blocks. It seems they're all back ordered, and by the way, the prices are going up. So I'm casting around to find other contractors, and I've also got to find contractors, for the trusses. And so I get a hold of them, and they're telling me that delivery is at least a year away, well past our planned build date. We can't have a foundation up there without having floors and roof trusses on it. So, we can't get trusses at any price. And don't even get me started on lumber prices. The costs are going up like a rocket ship. Lumber prices for the spring of 2022, they're up 400%. And no contractors are willing to quote on our project. So That's out of the question. Now, we managed to get an order in for appliances, surprisingly, but again, they couldn't guarantee delivery. We ran into the same problem trying to place an order for windows and doors. Clearly, what's happened is all the supply chains are broken. Now, I'm starting to get real nervous. I'm watching the building costs go through the roof and timelines stretching out over years instead of months. Now, it's been my job to get quotes and hire and manage some of these contractors, and I bring all that information to the Dutton family, and they make all the key decisions. Now, I've been putting on a brave face lately and trying to find ways to sort of soften the blow about these supply chain issues and the price escalation, but things are starting to look pretty grim. So at the next Dutton family meeting, we discussed the rising costs and the stretching timelines. Even so, we all agree that we're just going to press on. But it's also at that same meeting where we decided to add another design change. We're going to add a resort-style pool, cabana, and entertainment zone to the project. Well, the next week, it was like all the air went out of my sails. I was about to find out that this was going to add well over $100,000 to the project. And once again, no builder is going to quote, and especially on our timeline. Now, I'm talking trouble, and that starts with T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the pool and the entertainment zone design. I mean, who wouldn't? It's like everything else in the project, though. This pandemic has made it unaffordable, and I just can't ignore the fact any longer that there's simply no materials or labor available to actually build it. So I had to say uncle. Now, that's a strange way to say I give up. Did you ever wonder about how saying uncle got that meeting? They say that in Roman times, when you gave in to a bully, you would say patru, mi patriosmo. I think that's how you say it, which means uncle, my best uncle. This gave the bully the status of the second most powerful member of your family. That is, after your father. In other words, I admit that you're more powerful than me. Now, let me explain why this is kind of ironic. You see, my father was a civil engineer, and he served as the city engineer and commissioner of engineering for a number of large Canadian municipalities. In effect, he was the master of the construction and building trades bureaucracy. Now, I learned a lot from him, how to navigate this world, but in 2022, I've met my match. The government's pandemic response and their bureaucratic processes, they've won the day. I'm forced to say uncle. Now, really, when I think back on it, I think the worst part of walking away from the Dutton Ranch was having to sell the tractor. It's a sad day when a man has to give up his tractor, right, Dan? What do you say we pour one out for our homie? Well, we never built the ranch, and thankfully we never bought the farm, but like they say, it's all about the journey. It was quite a ride, but now, as you'll see in my next video, we're off on another grand adventure, so stay tuned. And until next time we meet, be sure to live your best life.